Today on the Pro Church Tools Show, we're going to outline the case for why your church needs a better slogan.
Because your slogan isn't just a set of arbitrary words, it's meant to inform your leadership's decision-making and to help bring your faith community closer together.
So in this episode, we'll contrast good church slogans versus less than good church slogans and provide you with the actionable tools you need to craft a better slogan for your church.
Hey, what's that over there?
Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show. My name is Brady Shearer, joined as always to my right, your left, it's Alex Mills.
Ciao.
You can subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Pro Church Tools in your podcast player of choice, and make sure you hit subscribe. Leave a review. Those reviews go directly to my email, so I'll get them, and they'll make me feel good when I do. You can also watch the video version on YouTube, youtube.com/ProChurchTools. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit the little church bell so you get notifications for the next new episode of the Pro Church Tools Show and all the other videos that we publish, and leave a comment. Did I already say smash the like button?
I don't know, but you could do it. Actually, don't do it twice.
No, don't do it twice.
So either do it once or 3 times.
Or like 7 times,
Yes.
but not 6. Today, we're talking about church slogans. And this episode was inspired, Alex, by a recent Instagram post that we published where we asked churches within Pro Church Nation, we are curious, what is your church's slogan?
Yeah.
And we got a ton back, which inspired this episode. I want to read just a few of those slogans. And we got
Some of
more
the
than-
best, right?
Well, the thing is, we got more than 100 comments on this post.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to read all 100, but all of these are indicative of virtually every single response that we got. So let's dive in. Win the lost, disciple the found, send the called. Reaching people where they are, helping them move closer to Christ. Making Jesus known to everyone everywhere. Restoring our communities with Christ one life at a time. Passion for his glory. Compassion for the lost.
Oof.
For the near, for the nations.
Nice.
Linking people to Christ, linking people together, helping people know and love Jesus, advancing God's kingdom one life at a time. We exist to see lives redefined, ballin' with JC since 1973. That last one was a comment, but was a joke.
That should be ballin' with JC since 93 is my life slogan.
Right, because you were born in 1993.
Yes. So thank you. Next.
So these church slogans inspired this episode, not for a good reason.
Right.
And this, I don't want any of this to sound harsh. I don't want any of this to sound insulting or demeaning or condescending to any of the churches that submitted these slogans. Because at the end of the day, none of these is based in poor theology.
Right.
None of these is a bad aim whatsoever. At the end of the day, all of our churches are trying to lead people to love God, love others, and make disciples.
That's it.
But when your slogan is this generic, when your slogan is this inwardly focused, the problem that you run into is the slogan loses its power within the context of church. It isn't able to serve its function, and it doesn't have the ability to bind your community together and rally your congregation into something greater for the future. And for me, because I've seen this play out within the products that we create, but also within the churches that I serve, when your slogan is not something that can serve its function properly, a lot of other things within the church begin to suffer.
It's funny that the way I'm hearing you talk about slogans now, and you and I have talked a lot about this, it sets like a pretty high bar for a slogan. Like you talk about serving its function and serving your community, and most of us maybe listening are probably thinking like Braid, we got Christmas to plan for. Like we're not worried about this slogan. Like we're just trying to reframe, love God, love others, make disciples, and to sound something pretty and slap it up on the website. It's just a slogan, right? But you and I both really believe that slogans are much more than just kind of that headline that you slap on your website and visitors see it when they scroll, and it's kind of about it. Maybe it's on your bulletin or your little invite card, but like slogans really do serve a purpose for your church. They're supposed to be part of the fabric of your community, what defines you, who you are, and also where you're going. And so many of our churches kind of overlook it, and we see a lot in those examples you gave. We got like hundreds of comments, and they all sounded very familiar, very similar, very reminiscent of other slogans I've heard, because that's simply what they were, just reframing of the same phrase. But we're not really sure that that's what a slogan is supposed to be.
So let's first define that. What is a slogan? If we don't have the same understanding, if we can't come from the same perspective, then we're never going to be able to make progress, help your church craft a better slogan. The best explanation I can give to you, the best definition for a church slogan is it is the external messaging you use to talk about your church. It's the external messaging. It's the communication that you use when someone asks you, well, what is your church all about? It's what informs the messaging you put on your church's website so that when a potential new visitor lands on the homepage, this is the type of messaging they're presented with. This is different than the internal messaging you use in a staff meeting. The internal messaging you use when talking with your senior leadership about what you're trying to accomplish, and you're linking it to your church's mission or vision. Now, they can be birthed from the same place, but the framing has to be different, because what makes a great slogan, understanding that it's external messaging, is an external message needs to be focused on your external audience. And this is the issue that I have with each of these church slogans. Reaching people where they are, helping them move closer to Christ. Is that a bad aim? No, of course not. But you see the way that it's framed? It's about your church, your internal staff and leadership, what you are trying to do. We as the church are reaching people where they are, helping them move closer to Christ. We as the church are restoring our communities with Christ one life at a time. We as the church exist to see lives redefined. And so this external messaging is focused on your internal goals. That's the problem. That's the disconnect. Your external messaging needs to be focused on your external audience. So what's a good example of this? This is from Elevation. See what God can do through you. Included in that slogan is you, the person that may at one point attend Elevation Church, and God. Absent from that slogan is the church. Now, they're implicitly there, see what God can do through you. There's kind of that invitational verb at the beginning. See, come and see. Well, I also love that because it's not declarative in nature. We know that so many people are skeptical about church. So many people are suspect about the church's motives and all that it's up to. And so removing the objection by not making that slogan declarative, instead making it invitational. Just come and see. We're just inviting you, and then we're going to leave it to God. We're not going to say that this is for you or for not, black and white. We're not going to make that hard line in the sand. Just come and see. Come and see what God can do through you. Completely absent from that slogan is Elevation Church. Here's another example. External messaging focused on an external audience. Be the church everywhere, every day. That's talking to Alex. That's talking to me. That has nothing to do with Northland Church, whom that slogan comes from. Finally, Saddleback. God wants to change the world through your faith. Again, absent from that slogan is Saddleback. We talk about God. We talk about your external audience, but there's nothing there saying like, we are Saddleback and we are going to accomplish this versus win the lost, disciple the found, send the called. That can be your internal messaging that you discuss, Alex and I discuss as we lead our church, but that cannot be the external messaging meant for the external audience. Because if you are a potential new visitor and you stumble across this messaging, what you see is an institution, an organization that's talking about themselves and why they're great and what they're out to accomplish. And if we as churches want to be faith communities where we are inviting people into the mission, if we're inviting them in and we're giving them agency, we have to be talking about their needs and their problems and their solutions and how the church can simply be a conduit for all that.
I mean, your external audience is going to look a few different ways. It's going to look like unbelievers who don't know anything about church, who just find your posts on social by accident. It's going to look like folks who are new to your community who are looking for a new church. It may look like folks who are in your community who have been burned by church and are familiar with what church is or what they believe church is. And in the same way that, you know, somebody who doesn't know anything about church finds you on social, somebody who's been burned by church and who hasn't gone to church in a while is going to find you on social as well. And so in this information age, that's why we do what we do here at Pro Church Tools, is to help equip churches to navigate the biggest communication shift in the last 500 years, that is the advent of the internet. In this information age, it's imperative that you have a strong slogan that you can put online, because 30, 40 years ago, a slogan wasn't as important because where are you going to put it? Like, where are you reaching this external audience? But now we're reaching external audiences every day online. People are finding you on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, and they're finding your website. They're just stumbling upon it. And so that's where you put your slogan in your Instagram bio, on your church website, so that when I land on Elevation's website and I see what God can do through you, I feel personally addressed, regardless of where I'm coming from, how I'm approaching church as someone from the outside. I feel personally addressed, and I can see myself as a part of that community because they've addressed me first with this strong slogan. So this is how a slogan works to serve your ministry, to serve your mission. These 3 slogans that you gave as examples, Braid, from Elevation, Northland, and Saddleback, in an internal staff meeting, a lot of their mission and vision, like you mentioned, would be tied to serving this mission, right? Like, is not divorced from this idea, but it's just reframing how we're phrasing it for that external audience.
And a great slogan can obviously do amazing things for those that are not yet connected to your church. It can do amazing things for the people sitting in your pews every single week because it invites them into the narrative and into the mission. They have agency in that process. They're part of the faith community. They're not simply observing as your staff and leadership do the things that your church wants to do, but they're invited and almost obligated to be a part of that process thanks to the messaging. But it doesn't just help your church's external communications, it also helps internally when it comes to decision-making, evaluation, and conflict mitigation. How does it do that? Well, for decision-making, if you have a church slogan, if that is the pinnacle of what your church is trying to accomplish, every time you have a tough decision to make, where you have to say, we're going to go with option A, or we're going to go with option B, or we're choosing to invest resources, financial, time, creativity into this versus this, because you can't always do both. When you have to make decisions, you can then look at this slogan and say, in light of this slogan, what option is going to give us the best chance, the best predicted chance of accomplishing it? And now you actually have the ability to avoid conflict. Because when someone comes to you and they say, well, we want to do this thing. We want to spend our money this way. We want to install this new ministry. We want to try this new endeavor. It's almost required of them to explain how this new idea will help accomplish the slogan. And if in any way it does not, if in any way it takes away from that stated mission that everyone has agreed upon and everyone in the church knows, so you can't just, slide something in there because everyone knows you're always talking about this ideally. Now, there's not so much of a conflict between Alex and I. It's not like I'm the person that has to say, Alex, that's a great idea. I'm happy that you are ambitious and want to serve the church, but I'm deciding that this is not the right thing for us now.
No, it's like we weighed this up against our slogan and asked ourselves, does this help our community move in this direction? And the answer is either yes or no. And then so it's kind of like this, this objective bar that you can kind of set things up against and say, hey, does this meet the criteria here? And you and I have talked about this recently about churches of any size. Like, you can't be everything to all people, right? So in your community,
that was one of the slogans, though, a church to all people. I promise you.
But you can, regardless of your church size, whether you're the smallest church.
What if it's your slogan? Can you if it is your statement?
You can't.
Okay.
And regardless of if you're the smallest church on the block or the biggest church on the block with all the resources, you have to make decisions about where you're headed as a community. And centering yourselves around a church slogan will really help because the way we do that in our own personal lives is we kind of weigh our decision-making often against the Bible or the life of Jesus, right? It's like if I have a decision to make or even a small decision of like, should I say this or not? It's like, okay, WWJD, what would Jesus do? I weigh it up against that standard. The same thing is true in church. It's like, okay, we have this standard. This is what we're trying to do. So we weigh these things up against it and say, okay, this might be a great idea. This ministry opportunity that you've brought to us may be a great idea. It could help people move closer to Jesus. It's all good, but is it helping our community move in the direction that we want to go? If not, if it doesn't match up with our slogan, then we're going to have to revisit it.
How can you craft a great slogan? Likely, if you're like most churches, even if you're like most churches in Pro-Church Nation, which generally skew a bit more digital savvy and communication savvy, the first thing you need to do is rid your external message of any internal communications. Stop navel gazing and looking inward and talking about yourself when you are trying to address others. It is exactly the opposite of what you should be doing. So rid your external communications of any internal messaging, of any navel gazing. From there, you want to create and craft a slogan that is memorable. So when we were working on our slogan for Pro Church Tools, we had a lot of different ideas for discussing, we want to help you with digital and help you figure out media. When we worked very hard to discover this seize the 167 idea, that messaging became very memorable for people within Pro Church Nation. Seize the 167 hours beyond your Sunday service. The messaging in itself paints a picture. You can almost like see Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You can almost see the calendar in your mind as you say it. You can see this calculator of 168 subtract 167 and the 1 hour Sunday service that's left over. And then when we talked about the biggest communication shift in 500 years, these numbers are very memorable and they're very repeatable. And that's also a missing link I see with a lot of churches. They will do the work, let's say, to craft a better slogan, and they talk about it a lot internally. And this is a symptom across many things. You see this in worship leadings. Like the church is finally beginning to understand the chorus of that song that's their church's song for the season.
Put it to bed, new song.
And the worship leader's already tired of it. And this is where you have to be a very good leader and be able to read the nonverbal communication, see the signs, and recognize the things that are happening around you that are not being actually explicitly stated. At the time that you are going to be so sick of your church's slogan is when you need to be repeating it more than ever. If you listen to every single episode of our podcast and watch every single video, you have certainly noticed how many times I have said, seize the 167. How many times I've said the biggest communication shift in 500 years. That is very intentional. And if you are one of our biggest fans, one, I love you. Two, you've probably gotten it at this point. And maybe you've gotten even to the point where you're like, Brady, we get it. You don't have to say it this many times. But I do. Because every single day, people are discovering our content for the first time. And I don't even say those slogans every single episode or in every single piece of content that we publish. I'm kind of hoping that you're going to consume 3 to 5 pieces of content. And if and when you do, you'll stumble across that messaging eventually. And maybe you'll hit prochurchtools.com and see in size 172 point font, seize the 167. And I say those things over and over again because your message can be incredibly memorable, but you still have to repeat it over and over and over again. You can be singing the most catchy worship song ever, but people just don't come to church that often. And so you need to sing it week after week. And by the time you're going to get sick of it is probably when you're finally going to be able to see it getting caught on with your congregation. And I get messages all the time by saying, you know, I believe in this strategy, but I can't get the entire senior leadership on board to talk about it. And if you are internally pulling in different directions, you can really never hope to see your congregation on the external side of things really start running with the vision.
And when you start centralizing everything that you do in your church around this slogan, around this mission and where you're headed, you know, whether it's programming or even the songs you're singing, how you're preaching and teaching from stage, when people start to catch that, you just repeat it over and over and over in all of your messaging. When people start to catch that, they'll begin to do a lot of this work for you in the way that, like,
great point.
When somebody asks them about, hey, you go to that church down the street, right? Like, what's it like? They're going to, like, that slogan has become a part of their fabric as a member of your community as well. And they'll be like, oh, like, our church is all about, like, seeing what God can do through you. And like, this is how that's worked out in my life, right? That it just becomes part of their lexicon, their language. And that's super helpful for you as a church because people are doing that almost like evangelistic work for you. They're talking about it on social. They're using it in their hashtags. They're telling their friends about it. It just becomes part of that community language because you are doing that first, using it from stage in your messaging online all the time, over and over. And you said it perfectly because I resonate with that as a worship leader. When you get tired of it, that is just when your community is starting to grasp it. And so this, as leaders, this is not about us. We need to keep repeating this stuff until we're blue in the face because people are just starting to catch on.
You can do so much great work to craft a brilliant message, but if you don't say it enough, like you just alluded to, you're never going to see it spread the way that it can. And I can't tell you how many times I have worked to craft just messaging that I think perfectly encapsulates in a memorable and repeatable way a complex idea. So we did this last year with Stop the Scroll on social media. We were starting to recognize that consistent branding on social was not the best way to gain attention. And attention is the most valuable thing that you can earn, because without attention, you can never share your message that needs to be heard by people. So you need to focus on creating designs that are eye-catching, almost unusual, so that you can stop the scroll, which is the first action needed to gain someone's attention to then share your message with them. It's very hard for me to take all that I just said and explain it to somebody.
Right.
But this idea of stop the scroll was messaging that people could understand and they could repeat it. And I can't tell you how many times I've just been scrolling through my Facebook feed and someone say in a Facebook comment or a Facebook post, oh yeah, it's like Brady says, stop the scroll.
Yeah.
Because that messaging, it went from my head and my lips, and then it got into the hearts of other people, and then they began repeating it over and over and over again. And that message went then way farther beyond what I could ever do, because I don't have as much influence as maybe that person does in the life of the person they were responding to, or their sphere of influence. But because my idea went from me to them, they could then share from them to their sphere of influence. The same thing can happen in your church. And the final thing you can do to craft a great slogan is find a differentiator. Now, a lot of the time we think that means you versus the church across the street. You versus the church across town. And there is definitely something to understanding your church's unique DNA and what makes you different than other churches, and leaning into your strengths versus trying to do every single thing well or doing every single thing the same as the church down the street. We all know the comparison is the enemy of joy, and copying what other people are doing almost never leads to the results that you want. At least when you copy over and over and over and neglect what makes you unique and makes you special. But what I want to talk about here is not differentiating your church versus another ministry, but the differentiation between life in Christ and life living for self. Because the term the upside down kingdom is perhaps the best verbiage I've heard describe what life in Christ is with, because someone... Actually, I think it was me. At least my pastor in youth always said it was me that came up with this. And I definitely took credit for it. Oh, yeah, but as like a 14-year-old. Okay, it was like yesterday when I made an amazing joke on Twitter. You didn't see it, saw someone else make the same joke, posted it in general Slack, and was like, this joke's hilarious. I was like, I made this joke 30 minutes before them.
That's true. That happened.
We just had the same realization. Anyway, you're right. I can take credit for enough of things. Stop the scroll. I'm not going to take credit for the upside down kingdom.
But that is what it's like. So much about this life with Jesus is like counterintuitive to how, just generally we think life works. It often feels like we're a fish swimming like singularly upstream when everyone else is going one way. So it is, although maybe you didn't come up with it, I think it's one of the best ways to describe what life with Jesus looks like. And
that is a key differentiator for what your church is dealing in versus what everyone else is dealing in. The whole world is telling you, do you. It's all about like whatever you want. And Jesus is saying, well, actually, the true path to life is giving your life away. The true path to understanding your purpose is to serve others and not serve self. And so that differentiator is baked into what we're already doing. And so I've found in every single communication brief that I've put together, if I can craft a new paradigm that says, this is the world that you think you need to be living in versus this is the world you need to be living in. When I can create that paradigm, it almost necessitates the need for what I'm trying to tell churches they need. Right? So if you can create this old way versus new way paradigm, what then you can say is, look, this is the narrative that you need to accept. This is the narrative that you have been telling yourself. Once you accept the narrative, we can help you then as a church, because this is what we do. We can help you walk in that. And you see this all the time with church assimilation things like growth track or starting point. You see this, someone new comes into the church, and this has just recently happened in my life. Someone new comes to our church, and I'm sitting with them in service, and they're talking like, man, I don't know what it is. Like every time I leave here, I just feel so much happier than like the rest of my week. It's totally different. And this is a person that's, my age, but pretty unfamiliar with what church can be. And so then, they take a step, and the next thing they would do is like get baptized. And then they would start serving. And if you have a slogan, this narrative that's talking about and putting words to this feeling that they're feeling internally, suddenly now they have the language to share it with others. But if there's no language, there's no shared language, across the entire church, there might be shared experience, but people won't know how to talk about it. And if you can put language, as your church should, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to like explain these existential matters of life and help make sense of it all. Yeah. And we need to do that through speaking. If you can put language to the shared experience, those feelings that we're all having, that's when you can begin to see this message that we've talked about start internally and then begin to spread outwards.
Yeah, and that's good news for your church, because here at Pro Church Tools, when we are using messaging about products and we have to kind of craft that old way versus new way narrative, we have to like kind of work hard to find that narrative. But when it comes to life with Jesus, like the narrative's been played out for us. It's like, it's there.
Jesus every single time. You've heard it said this way. I'm going to say it this way.
Exactly. It's like, we don't have to create any of this content ourselves. Like, it's there for us. So if you look at these three slogans that we've used as an example, see what God can do through you. Be the church everywhere, every day. God wants to change the world through your faith. They all kind of like, the world would say like, you have to work for what you get. And Elevation says like, no, like God wants to do this through you. Like, it's him who can do this through you. And then Northland says, be the church everywhere, every day. People who are external, when they think of church, they think of like steeples, Sunday, four walls. And Northland's like, hey, you are the church everywhere, every day. So it's just upside down again, right? And then Saddleback comes in, God wants to change the world through your faith. Like in this social kind of activist moment that we're in here in 2019, we do a lot of like picketing and stuff to change the systems that are going on in the world. And Saddleback's like, hey, God wants to be the change in the world through what? Through your work, through your protest? No, through your faith. Right? So these three churches have done a great job of crafting that kind of upside down narrative, addressing somebody who's external, who may have no frame of reference for faith, and putting language to that experience that they're going to have if they come to that church.
I wanted to share one more practical example of how powerful it can be when you do the work to craft, and sometimes I feel like it's just discovering the true narrative and slogan.
Mining it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's there, but it's covered up with a bunch of language that's more confusing. It lacks clarity. There's ambiguity. And you do the work to mine, and when you get it, you're like, this is it. And so this happened with Nucleus. Nucleus is this software that we've been building for close to 3 years now. And it was sometimes difficult to talk about it until last year when I finally discovered like, oh, this is the true slogan for what we're trying to do at Nucleus. And it's been up on our website for, I guess, more than a year now. And it's simply see more next steps and more life change at your church. And we'll unpack a little bit more what that means to kind of give you an example of how you can take a single slogan and then how that expands into every single thing you do as an organization. But I thought that perhaps the best way to illustrate it was to play for you the overview video that I just wrote yesterday. So take a look at it. Well, hey there, I'm Brady Shearer, the founder of Nucleus, and this is how Nucleus works. Our platform is built upon a single belief that the most important thing that can happen in your church is a next step. A person in your faith community taking an intentional stride towards Jesus. Because if you're like me, you want to see your church full of active participants, not passive spectators sitting idle on the sidelines. And Nucleus is the first platform designed to help you do that. And each application within Nucleus works together to get those results. Because you see, we're living through the biggest communication shift in 500 years. Church attendance is declining, and specifically for people 40 years old and younger, those that consider church attendance even important is at an all-time low. And yet, despite that, most churches still consider weekend attendance to be the ideal indicator of whether or not their church is healthy or growing. But here's the thing. If you're still operating within that paradigm, you'll never be able to get the full picture. And don't get me wrong here. Church attendance is important, but it can't be our only measurement tool. Because as an evaluator of life change, what all our churches are trying to accomplish as we lead people to love God, love others, and make disciples, church attendance is incredibly flawed. Consider that church attendance doesn't care if the people already in your church are becoming more like Christ. All it can tell you is if there are more people here this year than last year. So it's no wonder that churches are struggling in this new environment. Change is happening faster than ever before. Industries are being upended all around us, and we're struggling to navigate all of it. So where does this leave the local church? Well, here's the good news. While church attendance may be declining, the desire for faith, hope, purpose, and every existential matter that your church deals in. It's higher than it's been in a long time. Even better, thanks to digital platforms, your church can now reach the people in your congregation and community, not just during weekend services, but in every hour beyond Sunday morning as well. And this is why we built Nucleus. First, to provide a new paradigm for understanding what truly matters in church. And what matters is seeing more next steps, because next steps are what leads to life change. And yes, attending a service is one type of next step, but that's just one kind. And there are dozens taking place in our churches every single week. And as we begin to take account for each of these next steps, we begin to see a fuller picture of how our church is contributing to life change across the board. And this then informs our decision making and gives us the ability to make wiser choices to affect even more life change. And of course, with this new paradigm comes the need for new tools. The way that you do your website, social media, giving, and the way you talk about next steps, track them, and maintain all of it on the administrative side. It all needs to be done in a way that works together. And this is what Nucleus is for. Nucleus is the first platform built upon this new paradigm of next steps. And every application within Nucleus works in harmony to accomplish this singular purpose. And if you want to get into specifics, make sure to explore all of the information below as we outline the old way, identifying how most churches use digital tools versus the new way, and how Nucleus works to see more next steps across every facet of your church. Of course, we know this change isn't an easy one to make, and so from our pricing to our support and how we've designed Nucleus to be used by any church staff member or volunteer, everything we do is to help your church succeed. As it pertains to pricing, we've got a single flat monthly cost for Nucleus. It's $99 per month. There's no complicated calculators that determine your price. You don't have to pay extra if you use the platform more. And beyond that, we even offer scholarships for startup churches or smaller ministries that need a little extra help. We've got no contracts, no long-term commitments that are required, and you can cancel at any time. You can also get started for free with our 30-day free trial. You don't even have to enter your credit card info. All you need is an email, and you can test drive the entire Nucleus platform for free for a month. And if you run out of time on your trial and you need a little more to make a decision, we can extend your trial, no problem. And finally, we offer world-class support through strategy sessions, email tickets, and phone calls, and access to our private group of Nucleus insiders, so you can see how other churches are working to make this shift just like you. The Nucleus Playbook shows you exact strategies for using Nucleus in your church to see more next steps, and our Help Center is full of walkthrough videos and extensive documentation if you ever get stuck. So feel free to explore the rest of our website, or if you're ready to get started, begin your free trial today, and we'll see you on the inside of Nucleus. Here's to more next steps and more life change at your church. I wrote that video script yesterday, and to me, it was the perfect embodiment of the slogan that we've been using at Nucleus for about 18 months now, kind of expanded into our entire mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And as you can see within it, basically it describes an old paradigm and a new paradigm. Yeah. The old way of churches doing things, but we're living through this turbulent time, the biggest communication shift in 500 years, and now there needs to be a new paradigm. And that new paradigm necessitates new tools. Yes. And because this is the paradigm that we literally put words to, we know that our tool is the best way to work within this new paradigm. And you know, we talk internally so much about, you know, what we're trying to do with Nucleus, and building software is such a long journey. It takes years and years and years. And a lot of the times, maybe 2 years ago, people would come to us, and we're a new platform, so we're just trying to figure things out at the time, and we're not as robust of a platform as maybe another platform is. And so we would get support tickets, and people would ask like, hey, do you have this feature? Or do you have that feature? Do you have this integration? Do you have that integration? And sometimes I would see our support team struggle and our product team in turn struggle. And we would try to be like, oh, a lot of customers or a lot of potential users are asking for this feature. We don't have it. Well, we should probably build it. And we would kind of sway with the support tickets that would come in because we didn't have a super strong slogan that we could use as that decision maker, as that evaluator for what we were doing or what we were going to decide to do in the future. And even though I understood it internally, I could make sense of it if I had a 5-minute conversation with you, a 10-minute conversation. I couldn't articulate it in a single sentence and then unpack it from there, but first give you a launching point in that single sentence. And once we made the shift to see more next steps and more life change, we now had a single evaluator for what we were trying to do at Nucleus. If you are going to sign up and use Nucleus, our goal singular purpose
Yeah.
is for you to see more next steps at your church. And now, when someone asked us a question through support, well, do you have feature X? Because this platform does it. I don't think that you do. We would simply then say, well, look, we're not really trying to compete on features. Our narrative and goal for you when you use Nucleus is this. And everything that we do is to help you accomplish this. So the feature that you just mentioned, we don't think it's actually necessary, and here's why.
Yeah.
But instead of just starting and saying, that feature isn't necessary, so we didn't build it, which almost sounds dismissive. We talk about this grand vision that we have. And then you, as the potential Nucleus user, have the choice. Do you resonate with this narrative?
Right.
Yes or no? And saying no is actually a good thing. Because if you don't resonate with this new paradigm that you just heard in that overview video, if you don't resonate with that, that's awesome. There's probably another platform that will serve you well. But if you're listening to that and you're thinking, wow, you know what? We are seeing those same things in our church. We are living through this huge change. We do need a new paradigm. This is the new thing, and you're building that, and you're the first and only platform to do it? Okay, I think we need that.
Yeah.
That's good, because just like your church, you're not going to serve everybody. There are a lot of people that shouldn't go to your church.
Right.
And if you try to get those people in, you're going to ostracize the people that you should have in.
Yeah, it's so good. And that's so reminiscent of what we were just talking about and how slogans should function at your church. So when they come from the top down, now your slogan has infiltrated your decision-making team so they can make decisions for themselves. And now it's infiltrated and become the lexicon of your community. So now your church members are using that language for themselves as well.
Nice.
The same thing has happened here because of this slogan that's kind of defined Nucleus. And I can speak to it directly, because I work directly in customer support with Nucleus, talking to churches, answering those support tickets when people ask, hey, are you doing this feature? Can we have this? Can we do this? And so previously, before we had this kind of identity in the slogan, when a question came in, we'd have to come and ask you, like, hey, Braid, is this something we want to do?
You'd have to come and ask me.
And because you had it here, you could evaluate, we could talk it through and come to a decision. But now, because we've all kind of caught this vision and know why we're doing what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're getting there, we're all equipped to answer those questions ourselves because we get to hold it up against a slogan. Does that request match what we're trying to do here? If yes, then I can respond without coming to you. I can respond. I'm equipped and explain why yes or why no. And so that's how that's really served us as staff members, and it's going to function the same way at your church.
My goal with the Nucleus and with all of Pro Church Tools is to help as many churches that want to understand this new paradigm, because I think that the future of church is going to rely on us forgetting, or at least not valuing as much as we do now, church attendance, and start putting all of our resources into seeing people take more next steps.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I have dedicated my life to up until this point. But for that to happen, for all of the people that use Nucleus to first understand that, the team that serves them needs to understand that. And my team, as Alex just explained, can't understand it until I can take my understanding of it and put it to words in a slogan. So literally, the slogan is what will accomplish everything that I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's actually hyperbole to say that, because language is so important to taking complex ideas, distilling them into what Alex said, the ability to catch the vision. And you can see it happen with our folks that use Nucleus. Even though we're not often speaking to them face-to-face, whether it's on the phone or it's in an email ticket or a strategy session, you can kind of see that light bulb that goes off. Oh, I understand that.
Yes.
And one of the challenges we face is the person we're speaking with might understand it, but then they have to get their entire church leadership to understand it before they can get their church to understand it. And you can see how difficult it is for all of this to catch on, because churches have done things for one way for so long. Churches are resistant to change. This turbulent time we're living in makes things even more difficult to change, because you're like, well, I don't want to risk it. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm already doing because at least it's familiar, even though it might end in bad things. I'm going to stay with it now. So we needed something. We needed an amazing slogan, an amazing story and narrative that I could take and give to the team so they could serve the churches that use Nucleus, so those churches could serve their leadership teams to serve their congregations, to serve the world.
Yeah. And like, In the same way that your slogan is external messaging for an external audience, ours is the same thing. So think of our Nucleus customers as kind of like our internal audience. It's their leadership teams who are the external audience that this slogan has to resonate with. So when you take Nucleus, for example, to your senior leadership and say, hey, we want to start using this software, they say, why? You say, oh, well, it prioritizes more next steps for our church members, which looks like more life changed. Your pastor's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to do here too. Like that's what we're trying to do. That makes sense. So they can catch that and run with it.
Which is so much more powerful than just being like, it's a bit cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Which might be convincing in the short term, but if what you're using when it comes to your tools, if they're not directly tied to your church's mission, then that's a short-term choice.
Yeah.
And you might save a couple bucks in the interim, but long-term, will it help you accomplish what you're really trying to do? Or it's way more convincing than saying, oh, well, this platform allows for this feature and our old one didn't. And that might solve a single pain point and that might be compelling in the short term. But again, in the long term, someone else will just build that feature. Someone else will just undercut that price.
Yeah, so then
someone
you
else
just
will
move
just,
along.
duplicate whatever it is that nothing can replace, nothing can replicate, nothing can duplicate the slogan that is based on the narrative, that is based on the paradigm that you have articulated. Again, it's not that we invented this paradigm of attendance gives you like this small view into your church's overall
language
health and
to
growth.
it.
We just discovered it. We did all the mining work. We put the language to it. And now that truth that we have put words to can spread and can affect life change around the world.
Who would have ever thought that we'd be so pumped up about slogans?
Well, I did. I wrote the episode.
That's true.
But it's the perfect transition point to also finally reveal the big announcement that we have been working up to with Nucleus and with Storytape. I talked earlier about how when we had a lack of slogan and narrative, our product decisions would kind of be all over the place. And you can even see this with, decisions that we made in the past. Oh, we built this feature, which doesn't really make sense for what we're doing, but like people asked for it. And when we finally had this slogan and narrative and vision for what we wanted Nucleus to be, it became clear to us that Storytape and Nucleus needed to merge into a single platform. And so as of today, it's now officially happened.
Yes.
Storytape has joined Nucleus and has been renamed. So it's all part of Nucleus now. The stock footage side of Storytape is now called Nucleus Media.
Yes.
And the social program element of Storytape, where we were sending daily done-for-you social media posts for churches every single day with unlimited customizations and After Effects project files and Photoshop project files and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That is also now part of Nucleus, and it's called Nucleus Social. And so you can log in directly to your Nucleus account, and you can download all of the posts for this month.
Yes.
You can request a customization for a post if you need something changed because it doesn't perfectly fit your church context. That's what the customizations are for. You can download our new feature within it that we've also added, Instagram story guides.
Yes.
We've added that as well, and it's all now part of Nucleus. So Nucleus now contains 4 different applications. We have Nucleus Web and Nucleus Sermons.
Yeah.
Which is what Nucleus always was up until this point. But now we also have Nucleus Social and Nucleus Media.
Let's go.
And all of these things work together to see more next steps taken at your church. Because the way that we approach social has always been, we're not just talking about in-person events and announcements, we're wanting you to take a next step and pray right now in this moment.
Yeah.
We want you to take a next step and engage with this social post. It's all about involvement, active participants versus passive spectators.
Yeah, that's it.
So why do these platforms need to live separately? They should be united under one common name, Nucleus, because the mission and vision is the same. And the best part for everyone is that
it's
the
free.
Well, it actually is for a lot of people because the cost for Nucleus is $99 a month. That's what that cost was before this merger, okay? The cost
for Nucleus Web.
The cost now for Nucleus Web, Sermons, Social, and Media is $99 a month. So we're going to go over a couple specifics, whether you're a Storytape user, Nucleus user, both, or none at all. So listen carefully. This is how it's going to work. If you are a Nucleus user on our main plan, paying that $99 a month, which is the majority of users, you already have access to Nucleus Web and Nucleus Sermons. You also now all have access to Nucleus Social and Nucleus Media.
There you go.
Unlimited 4K stock video downloads.
Yes.
25,000 clips.
Yes.
Daily done for your social media posts. You just add it. Now you just get it.
It's yours.
Congrats to you and your loved ones. If you are a Storytape user, you should have received a link to migrate your StoryTape account over to Nucleus. And again, if you're on StoryTape, if you're on our main plan, which the majority are, you've got the social program, you've got unlimited customizations, you've got unlimited stock footage downloads.
Yeah.
Now you get Nucleus Web and Nucleus Sermons for free. Congrats to you and your loved ones.
Yeah.
Now, if you are both a StoryTape and Nucleus user, you also should have received a link to migrate your StoryTape account over to Nucleus and then link it with your existing Nucleus account. Congrats to you and your loved ones.
Yes.
Now, if you're one of the people that isn't on one of our main plans on Nucleus or StoryTape, so if you are paying on our charter plan for Nucleus when we launched 3 years ago, $49 a month.
Yes, congratulations to you, because that's a great plan.
It is. And you are welcome to keep it. There is no
Yes.
obligation for you to change. But if you want to upgrade to, again, that $99 per month plan,
Join your friends who are all paying that anyways.
you can get all of these new things at an incredibly smaller rate as before.
Yeah.
Because unlimited stock footage downloads up until this point were $199 a month.
Yes.
Just that.
Just themselves.
Nucleus Media, $199 a month.
Yeah.
Now, Nucleus Media, web, sermons, social, are half the price of just stock footage downloads.
This is one of those things where it sounds too good to be true. I think I mentioned this last week. Sounds too good to be true. And it is too good. And it is also true. So,
Well,
Wow.
we should talk about that. Like, why are we doing this?
yes.
So there are a lot of up-and-coming platforms in the church software world right now, many of which we are close friends with. And most of them have been venture-backed with a ton of money. And the great thing about that is that you can grow very quickly.
Sure.
You can hire a ton. The downside is that you don't have the autonomy that you used to in the same way. And most of those companies are now in a situation where they need to get as many users as they can and bring in as much revenue as they can so that the people that gave them money to do that will get even more money than they gave them.
Yeah.
That's how the system works. And it's not necessarily better or worse. We think it's worse. But there can be an argument made that it's better.
Yeah.
It's not the path that we've chosen. And the reason we haven't chosen this path is because last year we lowered the prices of Nucleus by 50% at this time. And this year, we just gave people an entire platform for free because we ran the numbers and realized, okay, we're going to lose money on this, but it won't be a critical hit to us. And I don't have to explain it to anybody but me.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to a board of people that said, well, we gave you $10 million. This is not going to get us 20 or 100 million. This is going to hurt that. I just went to myself and I said, well, hey there, Brady, are you okay with your company taking this hit in profit margin, realizing that you will still have a profit margin that does not in any way put the company at critical risk?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, because it means that thousands of churches will be able to use Nucleus that couldn't before.
And they get all the tools currently that are available to them to help their churches see more people in those churches take more next steps that looks like more life change, right?
Yeah.
So it all comes back to who we are and why we do what we do. And I don't get to make these decisions. You make these decisions, and the fact that we're able to do this, to put more tools in more hands to help more churches, is just like, man, it's the best thing ever. Like this has got me pretty pumped up.
Yeah, I was hesitant. I talked about this a couple weeks ago, being in San Diego, running the numbers. And I was like, there's no way this will work. Like, I want to do it, but it's going to put too much of a strain on us. Like, got to still make sure we can pay people with payroll. And I saw the numbers and I was like, wait a minute. I think we can do this. And we were going to do it next year. That was the idea.
Yeah, I just
Wait
have to
another-
live on the street now.
Okay.
But I said I was okay with that.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
You should tell them the raise that you're getting. Ayo. If you are not yet a part of Nucleus or StoryTape,
What are you waiting for?
there's no better time. And again, we're trying to remove every single possible objection.
Yeah.
You can join Nucleus with an email. That's it. You don't need a credit card. You get the entire platform free for 30 days.
So you're saying I get a free trial now of Nucleus Media and Nucleus Social?
Yes.
Wow.
You can download 30 free 4K clips. You can get 30 social media posts.
And I can post them if I want to.
You can post them if you want. And you're going to get a bunch of comments.
Yes.
That's how Nucleus Social works.
Yeah.
And you can also get 30 free days to build on Nucleus Web and Nucleus Sermons. No credit card required. And then let's say you're on day 30 and you're like, oh, I want to keep going with this, but I need another like 10 days to really convince my senior leadership.
Why don't you have another 30?
Just let us know. We'll extend your trial. It's all good. Okay? We have no contracts, no long-term commitments, and there's no fancy calculator to make sure you figure out your unique cost. It doesn't go up as you use it more. This is how other platforms work, right? If you're a big church, you're going to pay us a ton so that you can pay for all the other churches. And we also need to make a lot of money because we need to pay back our... No, everyone is just paying the same. And if you're a smaller church, if you're a startup church and you need help getting started, we have scholarships.
Yes.
There's literally no reason why you shouldn't be using Nucleus. Unless, of course, that paradigm that we explained does not resonate with you. And if it doesn't, then great. You're probably not a good fit for us, and you should go elsewhere to someone else that can be a good fit. But if that paradigm resonated with you, if you're like, yeah, that is where we need to be, we have now created a platform that is more affordable than ever with fewer hurdles to getting in, no barriers whatsoever. You can head to nucleus.church and get your free trial. We'll see you on the inside of Nucleus, and we can't wait for that. If you have questions, go to nucleus.church.
Yeah, we're there.
Or shoot us an email. hello@nucleus.church. And we'll be back in just a moment with Top 5, where you just saw my passion shared with my vision for my life's work. You're about to see it in a different way, in anger. Top 5 up next. Today on Top 5, the 5 most egregious traffic offenses. We all know what it's like to be cut off on the road. We all know what it's like to be behind someone that's going slower than we want. We all know what it's like to have someone ride our tail in traffic. None of those make the top 5 traffic offenses because they are too generic and we all experience them.
The way that I conduct myself on the road
This guy.
is...
You all would not even believe
Well, that's
this guy.
kind of what I'm going to get at. It's like, I'm a pastor, but what happens within the confines of my car is like, it's private to me.
Yeah, not when I'm in there.
And I feel like I'm about to be ousted because I'm really passionate about the rules of the road. And this video is going to go on the internet, on the interwebs. And I feel like I'm going to be exposed, but I have to be who I am. And people have to obey the rules of the road. And these 5 things, we haven't even gotten into them, and I'm heated.
They get progressively worse,
Oh,
too.
boy,
By the
do
time
they
I get
ever.
to number 2 and number 1, we might need to just throw this video away because it will be not safe for work, not safe for church, not safe for us.
Yeah, Joe back there behind the camera's got to have one of those. He's got to be hot with the sensor beep. And
the blur on our mouths.
Maybe just shut down the recording altogether.
I had a youth pastor, my youth pastor, who drove faster than I would say was acceptable on most roads.
Okay.
And he would brag so much about how he never had gotten a ticket.
Oh, okay.
And just be like, favor ain't fair.
Yeah.
And
Until it wasn't.
he would talk about like pride goeth before the fall. He's like, and like for me, my driving, he's like, you don't have that type of anointing.
Yeah, he's
like,
right. The
I
Lord's
do.
blessed me. Yeah.
I'm still angry about that. It has nothing really to do with these top 5. The top 5 most egregious traffic offenses. I will say about Alex, though, he is literally the best driver I have ever met. And we have been in incredibly adverse conditions in the highlands of Iceland, in the minuscule-sized roads of Scotland, in Spain, and then all around North America. And there's no one I'd rather have behind the wheel than him. That being said, he knows that he's the best and can be a bit overconfident.
We push the limits a little bit.
And that's what happens when you're the best. You know, you're Steph Curry, you're Michael Jordan, you're LeBron. You're like, could I do this?
Right, like the chef is taking shots that he shouldn't be taking. I get that. Yeah.
Cooking with the sauce, boy.
Yes.
And that overconfidence, it can be a bit scary. The other thing you need to know about Alex in the car is that he gets incredibly motion sick as the driver.
That's true. I've got problems.
So whenever we go somewhere, at first it was like, oh, great, this is a good excuse to let Alex drive.
Sure.
Because if I drive, he's going to get sick. He once sat through an entire filming trip in Utah, and like, I wondered why he was so quiet.
He's just trying to be a servant.
I was like, is he not like enjoying our time together? Like, is it too much time in this car?
It was just the
like
two
a
of
month
us.
later. He's like, oh yeah, I was like puking in my
violently
mouth
ill.
and swallowing over and over. And I was like, why didn't you let me know? And he's like, I was just trying to support the team. Top 5 egregious traffic offenses. Number 5, Over politeness at stop signs. You may not experience this in America.
Right, this might be a Canadian thing.
You get to a four-way stop. Everyone's looking at each other. Go ahead. When one person says go ahead, you are obligated to then say back to them, go ahead.
Sure.
At least that was the world that I accepted for years. Until this past year, I have made the decision to always go first at stop signs because this over politeness became inefficient with time.
You live near one of the most notorious four-way stops for this. I don't know if it's like the Canadianity mixed with the retired like older folk who live just down the road from you.
I do.
It's
live
like
in
everyone's just a little bit too timid, a little too polite. And then you throw in the curveball that is there are actual rules for this. So like for you and I who are rule followers, it's like, okay, the person if you arrive at the same time, the person with the most direct route goes first, the person to the right, like there are rules for this.
Or just the first rule. If you get there first,
Just go ahead.
don't give me the go ahead. Like my dad growing up, he was always suspicious of those people because he's like, if I go ahead and then we get in an accident,
It's on you.
it's on me because I disobeyed the rules. So I also grew up with my dad who was skeptical. He's like, why would they give me the whole
You can't
go
trust
ahead?
anybody.
No, you can't trust anybody. Over politeness is stop signs.
The worst. Well, not the worst, the fifth worst.
That is the best thing that could ever happen compared to some of the
yes.
Number 4, not passing, not overtaking in the fast lane. First of all, it's not the fast lane. It's the passing lane. If you are not...
Or the hammer lane, as I like to call it.
You're not allowed to comment on this one. If you are not...
I'll sit this one out, coach.
He never follows this rule. If you are not actively passing someone in the fast lane, or obviously catching up with someone where it wouldn't make sense to move to an interior lane because you're just going to have to move back to the passing lane within 30 seconds, you should not be in that lane. And it is unbelievably frustrating sitting behind someone that just thinks this is a lane that I can just sit in. I don't understand it. It's not even an obscure driving law. It's like highway driving 101. This is the lane that you go in to pass people. Yeah. That is why it exists. If you are sitting there and people are behind you and you are not moving over, you're not standing up for some principle. You're not being like, I am the person that's going to enforce the speed limit on this highway. If that is the mantra that you have ever lived by, unsubscribe and never talk to me because that's literally not the law. There are laws to driving on the road. You are not the enforcer of your own Aldrin justice. You don't get to make up the rules. You are an offender. You are a disgrace. You have upset me. Move!
You know what upsets me is trucks. So I don't know if it works the same in America or other countries, but in Canada, trucks are governed. So there's a limiter on the engine that limits them to 110 kilometers an hour. Now the speed limit...
It's about 65.
Yeah, so the speed limit is 100 kilometers an hour. In Canada, we're cruising around 120. We're pushing 130 in the hammer lane. So trucks have a hard time because all the trucks on the road are all governed to the same speed. So if one wants to overtake the other, if this one's doing like 110 in the middle lane and a truck moves over to overtake, you're both doing 110 and now the hammer lane is blocked because it's taken you like 8 minutes to overtake this cat next to you.
Who's going 108 and you're going 110. And you can kind of empathize with trucks. I always try to see trucks as my friends on the road.
Sure.
I'm like,
you don't want to mess with them.
You are my friends. And so I understand that you passing this individual will speed up your overall route by, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes, which makes a big difference to you because you're driving for 8 hours and I'm only driving for 1. And yet you can look at the highway behind you and it has now become a traffic jam for like a mile in reverse because these two are trying to pass each other and it's like two turtles racing one another and you're like, why have you done this to me?
Yeah, so if you live in the big city, if you're in Toronto, New York, LA, there's lots of lanes to pick from. So there's some more freedom there. Here,
we're working with limited real estate.
By the office, we've got 2 lanes. On my way home, 2 lanes. So you know trucks are getting up to silly business in 2 lanes. The passing lane. Oh.
Egregious traffic offense number 3. Oh my gosh, it's another highway rule. Oh.
You know what? I don't even want to talk about this one.
You're merging onto the highway at less than highway speed. There is a merging lane, and where we live, there is ample space to get onto your merging lane. You are now driving in parallel with the slow lane on the highway, and you have ample time to speed up to at least 100 before merging into the slow lane.
And regardless of what kind of car you're driving, there's enough time.
There's so much time. I have a Jeep. Now, I have a Tesla, and it can go 0 to 100 in, no time at all. But I have a Jeep, and when I get in that Jeep, I will put it to the floor, and it will go like 51. 52.
But you still get there.
It is incredibly slow. And I have never run out of time to merge. In fact, I will often take the entire lane to make sure that I'm up to 120 before merging to ensure that someone in the slow lane that isn't going 100, because who goes 100 in Canada? And yet, the number of times I'm in the Tesla behind people and they're merging at like 78 onto 100. And then I have to pass them in the merging lane to then merge in front of them. Lest I'd make a dangerous move to move over to the slow lane, straight to the middle lane, and then I'm merging too quick, which I do, but puts me at risk. This is a simple rule. If you're merging onto the highway, and this obviously doesn't account for traffic. If there's a traffic jam, you can't merge at highway speed. Merge at the speed limit at least. Otherwise, you're creating more traffic. Why are you creating traffic? We don't have phantom braking on this. When you're just braking, and people behind you think they need to brake.
Traffic's not real.
And the people behind you then brake.
You are traffic.
Like, you should all be driving Tesla so we could just solve this once and for all. But I understand, like, we're not going to put phantom braking on here. Like, that's a tough one sometimes because you want to leave ample space. I'm the type that is always leaving more space than others on the road. Merging at 75 when it's 100? The worst is, like, people will, like, come around the turn, right? You're coming around the turn on the overpass. You pull into the merging lane, and you're just now parallel. You've just become parallel with the highway. And they merge right away.
You had more time.
You have like a kilometer. There's like 500 meters. There's 500 yards of track. Speed up to the appropriate speed and then merge. It's not a race to merge over as soon. It's a race to go to the right speed.
There's different types of road rage. One of them that I'll out my wife here because she would tell you this herself unashamedly. She gets worked up in the car and says things and does things that maybe one who's a Christian should not. There's another type, and this is what I do when I get upset, and you're starting to see it now. When I get upset, I get quiet.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Some people go high, I go low. I get quiet, and that happens to me on the road too. So I'm not yelling at people. I'm not putting up any fingers. I'm not throwing anything out the sunroof. I just get quiet, and I respond with my driving. I let the car do the talking for me. And I feel myself, we're only halfway through this list.
The last two.
I feel myself kind of getting into that space, into that mindset, getting quiet. And so my participation from here on out may be low.
Egregious traffic offense, number 2. Now, I will jump ahead quickly and say that the number 1 egregious traffic offense is a very particular one. It is one that makes me more angry than any other because of the circumstances, but it is not one that you will come across likely very often. Number 2 happens almost every day to me. And every day, I struggle greatly. A lack of preparedness in the advanced green lane, particularly as the lead driver.
Wake up!
So, you are at a traffic light. There is an advanced green lane. I am the lead car in the advanced green lane. I have now shut down all peripheral things that are happening.
Laser focused.
I pause my music. I turn off the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm on a phone call with my wife. Sorry, honey. I've got to go. Hang up. I am now responsible. And I take this very, very seriously. I am responsible for my own vehicle and the 8 vehicles behind me.
Yep.
We have the opportunity as a collective whole to each get through this advanced green before it turns to an all green and you get stuck in the intersection waiting till that yellow at the end.
You're the general. You're the captain.
I'm the pace vehicle.
Yeah.
It is my complete responsibility because if I don't go as soon as I can, I will then hinder the release of all of the vehicles behind me. People don't take this responsibility seriously. They're on their phone.
That's a shame.
They're not paying attention. They don't realize that they will get through this advanced screen, but because of their irresponsibility, I will now not.
And they're going to let the person behind them take the responsibility. They're going to wait for that little toot of the horn.
The polite Canadian.
And you're still going to get through. That first car is still going to get through no matter what. So you're good. You're just going to throw that responsibility on the people behind you. They'll let me know when it's green.
I've never seen selfishness like this.
Oh,
Except for egregious traffic offense number 1. Peak selfishness. I told you it was a bit more particular. So this happens most frequently in dense areas. It happens the most to me when I'm driving in downtown Toronto.
Okay.
If you live in a dense area, this could happen really anywhere. So you are at an intersection with lights on all 4 sides. And you are trying to get straight through your intersection.
okay.
On the other side, straight through the intersection, are a ton of cars, which means you're in that precarious situation where you have to judge, can I get through this intersection? Or
Before the light turns and
if I jump the gun, am I going to be that awkward car that is blocking traffic coming the other way? This offense has nothing to do with the people that selfishly take up the intersection, though those people are offenders and need to just change their life, change the ways that they do life.
Find a church. Like, get saved.
Seriously. But the biggest problem is you, again, take great responsibility. I'm the lead car trying to get through this intersection.
Yep.
I want to get through. I don't want to leave any space because I want as many people behind me to get through as possible.
Yeah.
And we're all a little bit hot because we're frustrated. The light is green and we can't go.
I should be able
What
to
is
go.
more upsetting than a light being green, yet you cannot go?
Right.
You must act as if it is red.
Yep.
Frustrating. Here's what happens. You wait and you're judging because you have to start going through the intersection before there's enough room.
Right.
But you have to do it not,
Can't go too early.
you can't, you don't want to be too ambitious here. So you wait and you notice that, okay, in about 1 second, I'm going to be able to go. And then the next person behind me, they have the chance to go.
You know how you know that? It's because you're watching the crosswalk ticker go down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're seeing all the cars ahead of you and they're all inching forward, which means the car that you have to get behind, they're going to be inching forward soon. So you're preemptively ready. And then right as you're prepared to go,
I'm over here.
you are in the intersection to the right of me.
Yeah.
And you turn.
I've got a
right.
red light.
You have a red light. And you turn right into the spot that I was just about to take.
Oh, I just slid right in there.
I have a green. You have a red. And you think to yourself, oh, look at this space.
I can fit there.
I guess no one's going to take that. I think that someone does not need that. And me as a red, even though there are, 10,000 cars waiting with a green, it is my duty. That's my space. I get to take ownership of that space. And you turn right. And you can do it as well, you sick freak. You can do it because if you turn right and you only can get your little hood in there, you're still not obstructing anyone.
Yeah.
So you can just get in there before I can. You could do it before me. And you have no respect for me. You have no understanding of the needs of others. You're selfish. And all you care about is yourself. And I can't get through now because you turned. And guess what? Now people are angry at me because they think I wasn't aggressive enough.
Yeah.
No. Oh, not at all. I was paying proper attention. I was preemptively taking that space just before it became available. I wasn't waiting for a full car's length or 2 cars length. I wasn't holding up the people behind me, but rather you, in your disgraceful selfishness, the pride of the flesh, you took that space and now I must wait for another. But you know what? Another never came. And I had to wait for another full cycle as I watched you and all the losers behind you go through in your right lane. Oh, it must be hard for you to turn right. That's real tough. It's so hard to turn right. I'm trying to freaking navigate 10,000 cars and get through a stopped intersection while not blocking the people that are going to come in your lane. I was thinking about your lane this entire time. You were not thinking about mine.
You know what's tough about this one is that it's within the confines of the law. So legally, that person who took that spot was allowed to turn right on a red light. That was within the confines of the law. But they took advantage of that.
Right, they took advantage of the letter of the law.
With no mind for the needs of others. Have you ever heard of Jesus? Have you ever heard of my Lord Jesus, who washes feet, who laid down his life for his friends?
Forgive them. They do not know what they do.
Whoa.
I won't forgive him. I do know that he knows what he does. And it is bad. 5 egregious traffic offenses.
How do we move on from this?
We have a question from someone
It's not about traffic, is it?
No, and I'm not going to infer any of my traffic anger upon this person.
We need to reset. We
I
need
just
to,
assume
we
that
need to open the
everyone-
Calm app and just take a few minutes.
Yeah.
And we're back.
All right, here's the question. Close of the Q&A. There's a lot happening in this episode.
Yeah.
Whew. Our communications and social media team is struggling with Nucleus Social a bit. We use the Done For You social media package. We use our Facebook page for outwards focused stuff. We pretty much never post an announcement on there, but just try to build relationships with people through the page and offer help. Some of the Nucleus posts are definitely more congregational focused. And so we just end up posting a bunch of that stuff to our Facebook groups. But, Nucleus social costs money, and we'd rather have that going towards helping and reaching the lost and the far from God. Anyway, I've been sitting on this for a while because we love what you do. It's just a concern of ours. It doesn't mean that y'all have to change anything just for us, though. So this is indicative of a thought process that I see with a number of churches. Our Facebook page and the content that we publish on there, who is it for?
Sure.
Who are we trying to reach with our Facebook page? Because I know many churches that see it as an evangelistic platform, a platform where they should be posting the good news that isn't necessarily for their congregation, but can reach the masses and pull those people into the chance of getting connected to their faith community, which is not an aim that lacks nobility in any way.
Of course.
The problem is it's a misunderstanding of the Facebook algorithm, because who are the people that are going to see the posts that you publish on your Facebook page?
People who like your page.
Absolutely. And why would someone who is far from God, unchurched, disconnected from church, hurt by church, however you want to describe them, why would a person like that like your church's Facebook page? Is there a chance that someone does? Certainly. But that percentage of the overall like group on Facebook is going to be very, very small. So you have to very carefully walk the line, creating content that will be engaging for the people that like your page, while at the same time inspiring them to share that content to their sphere of influence.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say here is, if you want to use your Facebook page in an evangelistic way, there is a way to do it. But you need to create content that will resonate first with the people that like your page, that being those that are directly connected to your church, most likely your congregation. Create content for them first that is shareable, so they will be inclined to share that content to their sphere of influence, and that sphere of influence will contain people that are not yet connected to your church. Because the only way to get your content on Facebook in front of people that are not connected to your church is through money.
Yeah, pay for it.
Or through sharing. And assuming that you don't want to spend money on this, there is a free way of doing it, but you can't create content without your congregation first in mind. And this is the type of content that is difficult to create. We'll be honest with that, because it has to serve two distinct purposes. And it's much harder to create a piece of content that can somehow walk the line of an intersection rather than a single line. And this is what we're trying to do with Nucleus Social. I talked to this individual back and forth. The vast majority of our content is not church specific, because our mission is to seize the 167, not to focus on your in-person service. And if we're creating content for hundreds and hundreds of churches, which we are, by nature, we can't create content that is specific to your church, because we don't know anything necessarily about your particular service. So we might every single week send you a post that you can publish on Facebook on Saturday, and it's like, we can't wait to see you in church tomorrow.
That's 4 posts a month.
Other 5-6 days of the week, we're creating content that is meant to walk the line here. First, to engage your congregation, incline them to share it, and thus give you the chance, the opportunity to take that message and share it with those not yet connected to your church.
Well, a couple of years ago, Facebook came out, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg actually, came out and said it. He's like, we're not, unless you start paying for it, we're going to be taking away a lot of this organic reach of your Facebook pages from people's news feeds, because we don't want to serve them like advertisements and stuff that you're not paying for. We want it to feel relational. And so that's been very clear. And that's been a couple of years since that change has been made. So if you want to reach a new audience on Facebook, you have to pay to do it. It's the most effective and efficient way to do it, and you can do it. But when it comes to choosing a platform where you want to be organically discoverable, Facebook and doing it from a Facebook page is just not the place anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, Instagram even, it's a challenge to get discovered organically on Instagram anymore. We've talked about it 2 weeks ago on the podcast. TikTok is the place where a lot of organic discovery is happening. It's happening in a very unique way. Their algorithm works a lot differently. And there's a certain type of content that you want to be posting on TikTok. But when it comes to Nucleus Social and how to post to Facebook and Instagram and when and to who, you have to look and say, although you want a certain type of audience, you know who your audience is on Facebook. It's the people who like your page, and not even every single one of them is going to see those posts. So you just have to evaluate the platforms and the audiences for what they are. And if you want to grow your audience into a new demographic, you're going to have to pay to do it on Facebook.
Yeah, and the reason we included this question in our Q&A segment on this episode was to illustrate how complex social media is. Because I get messages like this every day that basically start by saying, Brady, our church is unique on social in that...
Right.
And then follows the message. And my answer to this particular question is basically identifying a paradox on social. You want to reach people that are unlike your audience? You first need to reach your audience that will then reach people that are unlike your audience. That's a paradox. It's not what you think would work, but it demonstrates how complex social media is. And that's the reason that with Nucleus Social, we include unlimited customizations because we recognize that every single church is like this church. Unique in their own way.
Yep.
So not every single post that we send out to the folks on Nucleus Social that are subscribed there will find every single post to be perfect. But if they want to change a post, great, unlimited customizations. Send one in and we'll change it for you. And we're going to continue to include social media questions, would be my guess, on this Q&A segment. Because churches have so many, because it's so complex.
Yeah.
Social media is video production and copywriting and communication and branding and graphic design and customer support and all of it then combined into one, and we give it to the worship leader.
Yeah.
That is a tough situation to be in.
Yeah.
And that's why we've created Nucleus Social. That's why we do episodes like this. And it's why we'll continue to answer your questions. If you want your question answered, send it in to hello@prochurchtools.com. And it may just be included on a future episode of the Pro Church Tools show.
Don't ask any traffic questions because we can't go back.
We'll have to close those.
We can't go
close
back.
that conversation.
Oof.
We need to leave that in the past.
Yeah.
The problem is people are going to make comments on this. They're going to pull us right back in.
Turn off the comments for this video. We just got to move. We got to move on. We got to move ahead. Got to progress. We have an advanced screen in front of us.
Jeez.
What are we going to do with that?
I'm going to take responsibility for it so we can all get through.
Seize this moment.
It's pastoral wisdom. That'll do it for this episode of the Pro Church Tools Show. Talk soon.